Hello, chemistry students. Mr. Niego here with a short video on dimensional analysis. I realize I've been out for most of this week, so just want to make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward. So this video and this worksheet is all about dimensional analysis, and dimensional analysis is a process that we use where we can convert units using conversion factors. And essentially what a conversion factor is a set of equivalent measurements. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, I have 1 mile and I have 5,280 feet. So those are equivalent measurements, although they have different units. So I have miles and I have feet. So I can arrange this conversion factor in a fraction, and it allows me to convert from one unit to another. So when I align this and I create it as a conversion factor, I can either write it as 1 mile over 5,280 feet, or I can write it as 5,280 feet over 1 mile. Once again, these are both equivalent, and I can swap them or switch them depending on what I want to get rid of. So let's do an example problem. So let's look at question number 3. If I wanted to go from 54 yards to millimeters. So the first thing I need to do is I need to figure out what conversion factors I need. So this one, there's actually a few conversion factors. So to get from yards to meters or millimeters, what I want to do is I want to convert from yards to feet, and then feet to inches, and then from inches to centimeters, and then from centimeters to millimeters. So in my conversion factors, I have several conversion factors that I need to use. The one that takes me from yards to feet, I have 1 yard equals 3 feet. And from feet to inches, I have 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. And from inches to centimeters, 1 inch, if I look up here, 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. Now here's the tricky one. How do I go from centimeters to millimeters? Well, if I think of my ruler and I look at a 1 centimeter section, the smaller lines would represent my millimeters. So there's actually 10 millimeters for every centimeter. So that would be my last conversion factor. So 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. All right, so now that I have my conversion factors listed out, the next thing that I have to do is I need to set up my dimensional analysis problem. Now there's different ways that we can do this. So I use what's called the train track method, but I'm going to show you the other method as well because it's what's shown in the other video. So in the train track method, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my cancellation line. And I'm going to start with what's given to me in this problem. So I'm given 54 yards. And then I'm going to draw a vertical line to separate what's given from my first conversion factor. So in my first conversion, I'm going to go from yards. Let me change the color. I'm going to go from yards to feet. So my conversion factor from yards to feet is 1 yard equals 3 feet. Now, we talked about in class with dimensional analysis, what I want to do is I want to have the unit that I want on the top and the unit that I want to get rid of on the bottom. Or if I look at the top of this page, what you want versus what you've got. Another way to think of it is if I had the same unit on the top of my cancellation line and on the bottom of my cancellation line, those units cancel. So if I have 54 yards and I want to take this conversion factor and apply it, I'm going to put the 1 yard on the bottom and I'm going to put the 3 feet on the top. The reason I do it that way is because if I do it this way, I have yards on the top and I have yards on the bottom, which allows me to cancel them out. If I were to stop here, my answer would be in feet. That's not what I want. I want to get down to millimeters. So I'm going to apply another conversion factor. So my next conversion factor takes me from feet to inches. Well, since I have feet above the cancellation line, and I want to have feet on the bottom. So I'm going to take this conversion factor and I'm going to put 1 foot on the bottom and I'm going to put 12 inches on the top. My feet and my feet cancel. If I were to stop right now, my answer would be in inches. Okay. I'm going to apply my next conversion factor. So 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. Since I have inches above the cancellation line, I want inches below the cancellation line. And the 2.54 centimeters goes on top. And last but not least, I have 1 centimeter and 10 millimeters. So 1 centimeter goes on the bottom, 10 millimeters goes on top. So when I solve this, it's like multiplying fractions together. So normally what I'd do if this was like a bunch of fractions, I would multiply all the numerators and then I'd multiply all the denominators and then I would divide the product of the numerators by the product of the denominator. There's an easier way. So what I'd like to do is I start with what's given and I work like reading a book from left to right and I look at each conversion factor. If I have a number in the numerator, I multiply. If I have a number in the denominator, I divide. If the number is 1, I don't do anything because dividing or multiplying by 1 gives me the same result. So in this case, I would take 54, and I'm typing it into my calculator right now. So 54 times 3. I don't have to divide by 1, times 12, times 2.54, times 10. I get an answer of 49,377.6, and the unit is important, millimeters. So if I have 54 yards, I'd have 49,377.6 millimeters. There's another way that we could write this. So I could do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. And what they show in the videos is this. So in the videos that you're watching, instead of using the railroad track method that I just showed you, they look at it as more in fractions. So I would take my initial value, which is 54 yards, and then I would multiply it by my conversion factor. And my first conversion factor, I'd have 1 yard over or under 3 feet. So 3 feet over 1 yard. Once again, I'm doing the same thing. If you notice that this is exactly the same orientation of my conversion factor, but instead of having a long line across, I'm looking at it as a fraction. By doing that, yards and yards cancel out. You could think of this as like 54 yards over 1. So the 54 yards is in the numerator and the 1 yard is in the denominator. So because they're opposite, one's in the numerator, one's in the denominator, they cancel each other out. My next conversion factor would be 1 foot in the denominator, 12 inches in the numerator. My feet cancel. And then I have 2.54 centimeters in the numerator, 1 inch in the denominator, my inches cancel. And then I have 10 millimeters in the numerator and 1 centimeter in the denominator. My centimeters cancel. Once again, I'm going to do the same thing. If my number is in the numerator, I multiply. If my number is in the denominator, I divide. If I have a 1, like all of the numerator or all of the denominators are 1, I can just disregard and not worry about multiplying or dividing, because any number multiplied by 1 will be itself, and any number divided by 1 will be itself. So when I type this in, it would be 54 times 3 times 12 times 2.54 times 10, and I get the same answer, which would be 49,377.6, and the units would be millimeters. Once again, this is just basic dimensional analysis. I use the railroad track method where I just draw one straight line. The videos that you've seen use this method with fractions. I really don't care what you use. What I care about is that you're showing your work and you're getting the final answer. Okay, let's look at question number 4. Number 4 is a little bit more difficult. So question number 4 says, how many miles per hour are 36 centimeters per second? So MPH stands for miles per hour. So this is a complex unit. So when I write 36 centimeters per second, what it really refers to is this. I have, and I'm going to do this both ways. So 36 centimeters per second is the same thing as saying I had 36 centimeters in 1 second. This is a complex unit. So essentially what I need to do is I need to go from centimeters to miles, and I need to go from seconds to hours. So I'm going to have a series of different conversion factors. So let's talk about centimeters, miles first. So for centimeters to miles, what I need to do is I need to work distances. So I need to go from centimeters to inches, inches to feet, and then feet, miles. So 2.54 centimeters equals 1 inch. That's my first conversion factor. So I should write CF for conversion factor. 12 inches equals 1 foot. And 5,280 feet equal 1 mile. So that takes care of my distances. What I need to do now is I need to convert my times. So I need to go from seconds to hours. So 60 seconds equals 1 minute, and 1 minute equals 1 hour. Okay, so here are my conversion factors. So when I start this out using the railroad track method, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put what I'm given in the left-hand side of my dimensional analysis. So I have a complex unit, so I'm going to write this as 36 centimeters over 1 second. So notice that I have unit, my first unit, or my first value, my given value has a unit in both the numerator and the denominator. Let's convert distance first. So I'm going to get rid of those centimeters. I'm going to convert those centimeters into miles. So since I have centimeters in the numerator or above my cancellation line, I need to have centimeters below my cancellation line. So if I look at my first conversion factor, 2.54 centimeters equals 1 inch. I'm going to put 2.54 centimeters on the bottom and 1 inch top. My centimeters cancel. And right now I'd have units of inches per second. So I've used this conversion factor. Okay, I'm going to move down to my next one. I want to go from inches to feet. So I'm going to put 12 inches on the bottom and 1 foot on the top. Once again, inches and inches cancel because one's above the cancellation line, one's below the cancellation line. And last but not least, I'm going to have 5,280 feet in the denominator or below the cancellation line, and 1 mile on top. So my feet cancel. So right now, if I were to stop my dimensional analysis, my units would be miles, which is in the numerator and not canceled out, and seconds, which is in the denominator below the cancellation line that's not canceled out. I don't want miles per second, I want miles per hour. So now I'm going to convert using my time units. So this is where it gets tricky. So I have seconds in the denominator. So therefore, I need to have seconds in my numerator or above the cancellation line. So I'm going to have 60 seconds over 1 minute. And my seconds are going to cancel. And because I have minutes in the below the cancellation line, I need to have minutes above the cancellation line. So I'll have 1 minute. Oh, I did that wrong. Not 1 minute, 60 minutes. So I'm going to have 60 minutes above the cancellation line and 1 hour below. For our rules, I'm going to work from left to right. If the number is in the numerator, I multiply. If the number is in the denominator, I'm going to divide. And if I have ones, I'm not going to do anything with them. So starting working from left to right, in my calculator, I'm going to type in 36 divided by 2.54 divided by 12 divided by 5,280. Okay, so that takes me to the end of my distance. Okay, now I have times 60 because 60 is in above the cancellation line, and then times 60. So I get 0.8, ends up being 0.80529. It goes on and on and on. So we'll just call this 0.81 miles per hour. Now, in the videos, like I said, they used a little bit different method. So they used fractions instead of this. This is called the railroad track method because it looks like a railroad track. You're really doing the same thing. It's just that you're using multiplication signs in between. So if I were to use the other method, it would look like this. So 36 centimeters over 1 second times 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters times 1 foot over 12 inches times 1 mile over 5,280 feet times 60 seconds over 1 minute times 60 minutes over 1 hour. Now, it's always a good practice to cancel out as you go. So my centimeters cancel, inches cancel, feet cancel, miles. Well, no, not miles. Miles don't cancel. We'll be left with miles. Okay. I have seconds and seconds canceling and minutes and minutes. So I have miles over hours for my unit. And once again, I'm going to do the same thing. So if I were to multiply mathematically, if I was going to multiply these as fractions, I'd multiply all my numerators, and then I'd multiply all my denominators, then I'd divide my numerator, the product of my numerators by the product of my denominators. That takes 3 steps. The easier way is just to work left to right. If it's in the numerator, multiply. If it's in the denominator, divide. So 36 divided by 2.54 divided by 12 divided by 5,280 times 60 times 60, and you're going to get the same thing. So 0.81, and I have miles over hours or miles per hour. So the word per basically means divide. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. We went through dimensional analysis. We went through question number 3 and question number 4 from this worksheet. Question number 3 is pretty straightforward. Question number 4 is a little bit more difficult. Hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please send me an email.